22 Celsius. During Friday...
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hey, happy Thursday to you. GB News on your television and on your radio. Feel free to mix and match. I mentioned the other week the great American short story writer Ring Lardner's terrific line. "Shut up," he explained. Are you a Yorkshireman wondering why you have no say in your village being demographically overwhelmed by 1,500 phony baloney asylum seekers from France? Shut up, explained the Home Office. Are you bored by COVID and figure you'll just assess your own risk like in the olden days of 2019? Shut up, explained the World Economic Forum. Would you like to be able to go on the internet and talk about your late husband and your orphaned children without being labelled as fake news? Shut up, explained Facebook and Twitter and the self-appointed American gazillionaire-funded fact-checkers of Full Fact. Would you like to have an honest conversation about refugee centres and sexual assault? Shut up, explained everyone. We don't do the big shut up on this show, so North Yorkshire MP Kevin Hollinrake is here, as are Leilani Dowding, Yasmin Mohammed and free speech warrior Toby Young. And no one's shutting you up either. So email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or Twitter me at gbnews. First, as always, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you. Good evening. The top stories tonight. The Chancellor says people should be reassured that benefits and pensions are likely to rise significantly higher than inflation next year. Rishi Sunak has also announced a £15 billion support package to help people tackle the cost of living. Millions of households will receive a £400 discount off their energy bills, and the lowest income earners will be given £650 in a one-off payment. The Chancellor also introduced a 25% temporary levy on energy companies.
Focused on delivering for people, and that's what today was about. And the timing of today is because we now have more clarity about what's going to happen to energy bills in the autumn. We heard from Ofgem earlier this week about the potential scale of the increase, and that's why we took decisive action to provide £15 billion worth of support to help the country get through the challenging months ahead.
Meanwhile, 4 Conservative MPs say they no longer support the Prime Minister since the publication of Sue Gray's Partygate report. A total of 20 Tory MPs have so far publicly called for his resignation. Separately, Acting Police Commissioner Sir Stephen Howes has defended the Metropolitan Police's investigation of the Partygate scandal.
Many of the photographs that we are seeing look bad, and Sue Gray's report has dealt with that. We deal with the law, not what looks bad. And just because there is alcohol present, can I just remind people that the COVID regulations are about breaching COVID regulations. They're not about whether there's drink there or not.
The Crown Prosecution Service has authorised 4 charges of sexual assault against the Hollywood actor Kevin Spacey relating to 3 men. The Crown Prosecution Service has also authorised a charge of causing a person to engage in sexual activity without consent. The alleged incidents took place in London and Gloucestershire between 2005 and 2013. The actor hasn't yet been formally charged as he isn't in the UK. In the United States, footage has emerged of parents outside a primary school in Texas urging police to storm the building as a gunman opened fire inside. 18-year-old Salvador Ramos reportedly locked himself inside a classroom with an assault rifle for up to an hour. 19 children and 2 teachers were killed. George Rodriguez lost his grandson in the shooting and he spoke of his loss.
We're all in groups, the parents, family. And they said, go to the Civic Center. They're going to bus them over there. So buses started getting there with students. Buses started getting there with students. Bus again. And no Jose. He didn't show up.
And just lastly, Ray Liotta, star of the 1990s American blockbuster Goodfellas, has died. The 67-year-old found fame playing Ray Sinclair in the film Something Wild, but is probably best known for his portrayal of Henry Hill in Goodfellas, a film directed by Martin Scorsese. His publicist said the actor died peacefully in his sleep in the Dominican Republic, where he was working on his latest film. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News, and now it's time for Mark Steyn.
Thank you, Polly. The news from outside that Texas schoolhouse of the police waiting outside for 40 minutes before going in is shameful and at odds with the official narrative that we were peddled yesterday and which is a big part of the problems that afflict our world right now. The World Economic Forum has wrapped up its annual Spectre board meeting at Davos. So let's have Klaus Schwab give it one for the road. And do feel free to join in your best Teutonic megalomaniac. All together now.
Let's also be clear. The future is not just happening. The future is built by us, by a powerful community as you here in this room.
Our future! The future is built by us. Tomorrow belongs to me. They all talk like this at Davos. Sir Nick Clegg, Mark Carney, miscellaneous Slovenes and Kazakhs, but it sounds much better with the old Germanic consonants. If you want to bat it out, right to the back of the upper balcony. You know, the funny thing about the, quote, World Economic Forum, unquote, is that they seem entirely uninterested in economics. Inflation is the highest in 40 years. Blameless citizens of some of the wealthiest societies in human history are having to choose between heating and eating. The fall in UK living standards is the worst in 70 years. The supply chains are wrecked in America. The alleged global superpower is all out of baby milk to the point where it's having to be flown in on military planes from Germany like a reverse Berlin airlift, lactating its way across the Atlantic. And yet none of this seems terribly of interest to the big shots of Davos, and most of the people doing things about the economy, like Dishy Rishi's 400 quid or whatever it is he deigned to give you today, are not going to make any difference to the long-term wreckage we are facing. At the WEF, the economy is of no interest. The business guys seem almost exclusively interested in systems of control of the masses, control of you. For example, the president of the Chinese company, Alibaba.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker.
Hey, great. Can you just stick it in my arm with the next COVID jab? That's the business guys. The political guys are all the same. Their principal interest is systems of control of the masses. Do you remember Helen Clark? She was Prime Minister of New Zealand for the first decade of this century. They used to call Wellington Helengrad back then. Very funny. And like Sir Nick Clegg, Ms. Clark seems to have seen high ministerial office in Her Majesty's government as a mere stepping stone to membership in the transnational jet set. Here she is at Davos explaining how the citizens of sovereign states are bored with the COVID.
The reality is that political resolve to fight COVID is waning. Popular support for measures is waning. You know, people are over COVID. The problem is it's not done with us, but we're in danger of losing this moment for transformative change. And let's face it,
oh, I say. So you rubes with your short attention spans and your rinky-dink passé democratic nation states have gone all post-COVID, which may mean you're no longer fearful enough to go along with the Great Reset. Well, says Helen, that's all the more reason why the experts like her need to do it all at a unitary, one-size-fits-all global level, while you simpletons scamper around the hamster wheel distracted by cakes and curries and ginger growlers. Because the package of things that has to happen is, quote, trans-sector.
the package of things that has to happen is trans-sector, and there hasn't yet been an effort to try and bring together a head of state and government level focus on the range of things that needs to be done. We said this needs a special session at the General Assembly. It needs a negotiated political declaration that brings the different threads together. We're talking not just the WHO and health ecosystem. We're talking the WTOs. We're talking the IFIs. We're talking the wide range of foundations, players in the space. And so a lot of people are doing bits and pieces.
You a player in the space? A player in the space? I don't think so. You don't look like a player in the space to me. You don't have a foundation like Bill Gates and indeed Helen Clark does. Do you know what those acronyms mean? Do you know what an IFI is? The Islamic Foundation of Ireland, the Industrial Fasteners Institute, the Intersex Fijians Index, the Indonesian Fridge Inspectors? Don't bother your pretty little heads about IFIs. Here's a picture of the Lord Privy Seal eating a vindaloo during lockdown. Get back on your hamster wheel. Systems of control. Elected governments are now partnering with the commissar, that's the word they like to say, partnering, friends with benefits. Elected governments are now partnering with the commissars of social media to restrict free speech even further. So there'll be nothing to talk about except this week's Ginger Growler. They had a committee hearing in the Commons today on the new online harms bill. The witnesses this committee called Tell You How It's Going to Go. A group called Hope, Not Hate. Ooh, that sounds so nice, like a fluffy pink bunny or a sparkly prancing unicorn. Hope, Not Hate were there to explain why we need less free speech.
There are loopholes that could allow some of the most harmful and hateful actors to spread harm on social media. So there are a number of citizen journalists who specifically go to our borders to harass people who are seeking refuge in this country. They call themselves journalists. These people have been specifically taken off platforms because they have repeatedly broken terms of service of those platforms, and we see this as a potential avenue for them to make the case that they should return.
Harmful and hateful actors, but don't worry, Ofcom which currently regulates UK TV and radio. I have the great distinction of being investigated by Ofcom right now. That really thrills me. Ofcom, the self-same Ofcom, will have its powers extended to the internet. The law hasn't been passed yet, but Ofcom's already hired a Facebook commissar, which again tells you where this is all headed. Here's Will Moy, the chief executive of Full Fact, the self-proclaimed fact-checkers funded by American bazillionaires to destroy British free speech. Quote, all MPs should ask themselves a simple question. If the pandemic happened again tomorrow, would this bill be strong enough to handle the fallout from harmful misinformation? Unquote. Because after the last 2 years, what we really need is even narrower public discourse, even more groupthink from the media pom-pom girls. You know, we've had on this show Vicky Spitt and Charlotte Wright, young widows in their 30s who lost the loves of their lives to the COVID vaccine. That's not my opinion. That's what it says on the coroner's certificate. But because that's not helpful to the Klaus Schwab narrative, to the Helen Clark narrative, to the Full Fact narrative, to the Ofcom narrative, clips of Vicky and Charlotte talking about how AstraZeneca killed their husbands, how Charlotte's now bringing up her young boys alone, those clips get labelled as disinformation because their widowhood is apparently fake news. Go on, ask a fact checker. They did a module in fact checking at Rockall Polytechnic. There is online harm out there. 2 days ago, some guy in Texas shot his grandmother in the face, as we were hearing about from Polly on the news, and then went and opened fire at the local schoolhouse. He announced his plans in advance on Facebook. Here's the governor of Texas.
As of this time, the only information that was known in advance was posted by the government on Facebook approximately 30 minutes before reaching the school. The first post was to the point of, he said, I'm going to shoot my grandmother. The second post was, I shot my grandmother. The third post, maybe less than 15 minutes before arriving at the school, was, I'm going to shoot an elementary school. I'm going to shoot my grandmother. I shot my grandmother. I'm going to shoot an elementary school. As Leilani Dowding pointed out, they have algorithms that will ban you in 30 seconds for posting disinfo, but nothing when you say you're going to kill your grandma and shoot up an elementary school. We'll talk about that with Leilani later, but it's worth remembering the people driving these online harm bills, they couldn't care a hoot about harm. They care about control. Toby Young is the founder of the Free Speech Union and of the Daily Skeptic website, and it's always great to see him. Toby, why is a Conservative government moving this legislation?
That's a bit of a mystery, Mark. I've been trying to puzzle over that one myself, and I don't understand why a group of Conservatives with a majority of 80 would be essentially handing a devastating weapon to their political opponents. Because make no mistake, the people who will be taking advantage of our new regulated internet, in which internet service providers who post harmful content risk being fined up to 10% of their annual global turnover. The people taking advantage of that and forcing social media companies to take down supposedly harmful content will be political activists claiming to be acting on behalf of vulnerable people. It'll be because they want to protect vulnerable people, they'll have to remove hate speech and misinformation, by which they mean anything they find remotely disagreeable or that poses them any kind of political challenge. That's the reality. Why the government can't see it is a mystery.
Well, they must be able to see at a certain level that it's just going to ensure that even more than presently, almost any matter of public policy is framed in left-wing terms. I mean, I know Boris isn't really much of a committed Conservative, and nor are most of those around him. But he must see that it's actually harmful to Conservative prospects. So you'd think a sense of self-preservation would kick in with those guys.
I think the only explanation I can think of, Mark, for why they have such an enormous blind spot about the political risks associated with this bill is that lots of Conservative MPs are themselves abused online. They get an unending stream of abuse, Tory scum, child killers, pedos, whatever it is, coming at them 24/7 on Twitter and on Facebook. And they think that they need to be protected from this harmful content, and this bill will protect them from this kind of abuse. That's the only reason I can think of as to why they're so enthusiastic about handing this weapon to their opponents.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, because essentially they think this is a way of protecting elites, powerful figures, from being excoriated on the internet, and they think they're part of that elite so that they'll benefit from it. But the concept they're advancing to ensure that, this one of legal but harmful, is very strange. So it'll be legal for me to say something to you in the front parlour of your house, but it won't be legal for me to post that on the internet.
That's right. What you can legally type, you won't be able to say online. This concept of legal but harmful content is, as you say, extremely worrying. So it won't be enough to comply with the new rules for social media companies to remove unlawful content. I think we can all live with the idea that they'll be under more pressure, that they'll have to give more priority to removing unlawful content that is both unlawful and harmful, particularly harmful to children. I don't think any of us have a real issue with that. The thing which is really alarming about this bill is that it will force social media companies to remove what the government is calling legal but harmful content. Now, we don't know what the legal but harmful content is going to be, because that's going to be brought forward not in this bill, but in supplementary legislation, in a statutory instrument brought forward by Nadine Dorries, the Secretary of State at the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. Now, even if you trust Nadine Dorries not to be too censorious in what she's asking social media companies, what legal content she's asking them to remove on pain of being fined 10% of their annual global turnover, which incidentally is more than $10 billion if you're Facebook. Even if we trust Nadine not to be too over the top, the bill creates a mechanism for future secretaries of state to define this legal but harmful content. Legal but harmful to adults that social media companies will be under this enormous pressure to remove. Can we trust Chris Bryant and Dawn Butler not to overreach when they're the secretaries of state at DCMS, if, God forbid, Labour wins the next general election? This is an enormous hostage to fortune, another way in which this bill is essentially handing a loaded gun to the enemies of every Conservative in the land.
Yeah, that's a brilliant way to put it, Toby. And we all know what the incentives of this bill are, which because we see it already. They'll take down the posts if someone says, "Oh, this is harmful, this distresses me." They'll take it down, and okay, you can then be tied up with them for 3, 4, 7 weeks trying to get your video or your Twitter comment put back up. Disgraceful. And Boris should be ashamed of himself, because he purports to be a big fan of Winston Churchill. There's any number of Churchill's statements that it will be illegal, supposedly, to publish on the internet once this thing goes through. He's seen off Cakegate. Oh, he skated on the cake, so the least he could do is get rid of this lousy bill. Thank you very much, Toby Young. Do visit the Daily Skeptic each morning. It's got tons of good stuff on there on COVID and free speech and a bazillion other topics too. We'll get to your reaction next. GBviews at gbnews.uk. And another subject that doesn't get talked about as much as it should, a Yorkshire village about to be demographically overwhelmed by quote-unquote asylum seekers. Don't go anywhere, we're coming right back.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Join us for a special GB News event.
The celebration of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
From pageantry here at the Palace
To the parties in your street.
We'll bring you 4 days of
Unforgettable moments.
between the 2nd and the 5th of June.
Join us live up and down the country as we share your memories
Of Her Majesty's extraordinary reign.
Send us your stories, photographs and videos.
at jubilee@gbnews.uk.
Come and celebrate with us.
On GB News, the People's Channel.
Let's get to your email. Sterling says, if lawmakers were truly worried about online safety, they would ban big tech spying and prevent the collection of user data. But they won't do that, will they? No, they won't, Sterling, because as I said at the top of the show, it's all about control. And so with social media, in effect, you are the product and your information is what they sell and what makes them profitable. And it makes them profitable and useful to authoritarian states, not just China, but places like Canada. And they will continue to do that because we now live in a 24-hour panopticon surveillance state. Richard said, why aren't the members of Parliament questioning the World Economic Forum motives and in particular the validity of this so-called pandemic treaty that the WHO wants everyone to sign on to? Well, I don't, you'd have to ask those guys, but I think somewhere deep down they dream of being the next Sir Nick Clegg or Ms. Helen Clark. That they think they go along with this because they'd like to get a big shot job on the board at Facebook or a big transnational bureaucracy such as Helen Clark. They're serious about this. It's all, we're in that state, you know, normally you're living in a free society, you switch on the TV, there's a dystopian movie, there's a film of 1984 or whatever, set in the authoritarian, totalitarian hellhole. The interesting point is how we get from here, free society, to the hellhole. Well, the interesting thing is we're on that continuum right now. They're serious about control and they have the technology to do it. On Tuesday, we reported on the North Yorkshire village of Linton on Ouse, whose 800 or so residents woke up one morning to discover that they were about to be swamped by 1,500 so-called asylum seekers, whom the Home Office has decided are running up too big a room service tab at the Holiday Inn, and so is moving them into the abandoned RAF base at Linton. Kevin Hollinrake is the village's MP, the Tory member for Thirsk and Malton, and he joins me now. How can it be in a settled democracy that an entire village can just suddenly wake up without any say and discover that it's going to be turned into something else entirely?
Well, I entirely agree. I think it's a disgraceful choice of site. I mean, I think the Home Office has looked at this site, the accommodation, it was an RAF base, there's accommodation there which could be suitable for the purpose, but the site itself is entirely unsuitable. It's right at the heart of the village. This is an open site, it's not a detained site. The village itself has 600 people in it, so there'll be 1,000, it's effectively trebling the size of the village. 1,500 young single men from around the world who were there for up to 6 months. Can freely walk around that village. You can understand the real concern and indeed panic from people in that village. It's absolutely wrong that a single village should be sacrificed on the altar of a national policy priority. It's simply wrong.
Yeah, we've been hearing about Rwanda for weeks now, that these guys are going to be headed to Rwanda for processing. As yet, not a single person has taken off from Heathrow bound for Rwanda. But instead, apparently without any preview, there's going to be guys arriving in the village at the end of this month in a few days' time. How long have they been planning this?
Well, I really don't know, and I've just I filed a Freedom of Information request to find out how long this has been in train, what other sites were considered, what the discussions were between the Home Office and the Ministry of Defence, who control the site currently before it's been handed over to the Home Office. So I don't know the answer to that question. The Rwandan policy was always going to be difficult, always legal challenges to it, but as a consequence, there would have to be some processing of asylum seekers in the UK still as well. But and I support the policy in principle. I think having asylum reception centres where people are processed quickly and efficiently is right, but you cannot put them in the centre of a small rural village. Every bit of Home Office guidance says that asylum seekers are supposed to be in major conurbations where they get access to public services and amenities. Linton on Ouse is not even a pub, there's a shop, that's all there is, just simply wrong.
And so there are going to be 1,500 guys, and as you said, about there's 600 to 800 villagers, so let's say do the arithmetic there's going to be at least twice as many people suddenly wandering around in a place where there are not amenities and where there's nowhere to go except the village shop. What kind of stresses do you think that's going to put on those villagers?
Well, I've met with just about everybody from the village. I've been to 2 public meetings on this. It is massive stress, anxiety, and indeed panic. And I've had young children, 9-year-old child came up to me with a letter, and you could see the panic in her eyes, and that all the way through to elderly residents in the village. Everybody is absolutely apoplectic about this and so concerned. Really, these are not irrational fears. These are rational fears. This is not. I mean, if you put 1,500 young men from anywhere in the world, in the UK, in that village, it simply would be unfair in that village. Most people will be law-abiding people who want to get their asylum claims processed. But in 1,500 young men, there's going to be some dodgy ones, there's going to be some wrong ones, and they're going to cause trouble, and that's what the village is worried about. So in the future, the liberties that people have come to expect in that village have been totally removed from those 600 people. It is absolutely wrong.
You know what's fascinating to me, though? You use the term legal challenges over the plan to process them in Rwanda. It's come to a pretty pass when there are more legal challenges to putting someone on a plane to a processing centre in Rwanda as opposed to just dumping them in a village in North Yorkshire. In other words, there seem to be fewer legal challenges available to the residents of this village than there are to all the clever, wealthy London lefty lawyers who want to get a piece of the Rwandan action.
Yes, I don't disagree with that, and I'd very welcome contributions from those London lefty lawyers if they wanted to help us with the legal challenge that we're mounting, because we want the Home Office to change its mind. I asked the Prime Minister about it yesterday at the 1922 committee. I asked him about it Prime Minister's questions last week, and I'll keep asking about this until we get this policy changed. So I want the government to change its mind. It's simply wrong. But we are mounting a legal challenge too. We're taking forward a judicial review in conjunction with Hamilton District Council, Mark Robson, the leader of that council, and we're really willing to take this all the way because this policy is simply wrong. There's no duty of care being shown towards local residents. There is a responsibility to their safety, and that's been completely overridden and in fact ignored. There's been no consultation whatsoever with the village prior to this announcement being made. Everybody thinks this is wrong, from the police to the local authority to the community, and indeed the refugee agencies, the charities that help refugees and asylum seekers, they think it's wrong too. It's a catastrophically bad decision.
This is about as basic as it gets, though, Kevin. If you can basically have a village that goes back to the Doomsday Book and even earlier, and suddenly, without anybody who's living there having any say in it, it can be turned into something else entirely. Thank you for joining us. We are going to stay on this topic because it's important. It's about as basic as it can get in a supposedly free society. Even before the online harms bill has shut us down, we don't really have much of a culture of free speech left in the British Isles, do we? So we tiptoe around the elephant in the room, which is what that distorted sex ratio in Linton on Ouse is going to come out as. If you take a village of, what Kevin was saying, 600 to 800 people, and you take 1,500 young men and you stick them in the mix, you're going to wind up with a population which will now be 80% male, 20% female. Because those refugees, so-called, are all men, mostly young, and with the natural appetites of youth. Hence this tweet from David Atherton. I now have two sources at North Yorkshire Police that Linton on Ouse women have been advised not to wear short skirts when the migrants arrive. So apparently the North Yorkshire plods are already doing what their neighbours in West Yorkshire did over the poor girls of Rotherham and blaming the victims, or pre-blaming the pre-victims. 6 years ago, I travelled all over the continent, Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Finland, Sweden, talking to victims of similar refugee centres, that's to say, women who were sexually assaulted by the residents. In Germany and Sweden, I spoke to the mothers of young girls whose daughters had been molested at the local swimming baths. In Stavanger, Norway, where there was a surge in sexual assault, I met a rather charming lady who'd started a class where young Afghan men could be instructed in Scandinavian courtship rituals, so that you might ask the leggy Nordic blonde to a screening of Love Actually, followed by a candlelit dinner, little Michael Bublé on the stereo, instead of just dragging the woman into the shrubbery and having at it. I admired the teacher's pluck and optimism, but I can't honestly say it's had much impact on the problem. Yasmin Mohammed is my fellow Canadian and author of Unveiled, How Western Liberals Empower Radical Islam, and it's great to have her back with us. Yasmin, you know, because you've lived it, of the tension between being in a Western society and yet having totally different cultural traditions pressurizing you. Do you think, just as there were all over the continent, there's going to be some bad news for the ladies of Yorkshire over this plan to make it a big all-male refugee centre?
Yes, I think there's no question. Absolutely, there's going to be problems. You've mentioned some problems that have happened all over the world. Everybody's familiar with what happened in Germany on New Year's Eve, that fateful year. There's a book called Prey by Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Islam, Immigration, and the Erosion of Women's Rights, which focuses exactly on this topic. I mean, it is absolutely terrifying for me to think that there's going to be 1,500 men ages 18 to 40, transient, coming and going every 6 months, entering this community. I mean, if I was living there, or if my daughters were living there, I don't know what I would do. Like that MP that was saying that people were losing their minds. Of course they are. It's an incredibly scary prospect. We can't pretend that what we see happening around the world, that we're not expecting it to continue happening. And also, like he said, grab 1,500 men from anywhere and throw them in this community, and there's probably going to be problems. But we already know that there are clear, you mentioned the Rotherham rape gangs. We already know that there are clear cultural and religious reasons why there's going to be problems with bringing these men into that community.
Well, I spoke to some of those men in Östersund in northern Sweden, just hanging around the bus station at night. And they were Afghans, and they were saying, well, you don't really know what it's like. You grow up in a culture where you don't see any women other than those inside your family. And suddenly, whoosh, you're on a plane, and when you get off, there's women walking around, they're showing their arms, they're showing their legs, they're showing their cleavage, and it's like you're in a pressure cooker 24 hours. And I have a measure of sympathy for that. There's a reason why Kipling said, east is east and west is west, and ne'er the twain shall meet, because when the twain meet, this is what happens.
Yeah, but they're human beings, and they're capable of controlling themselves. They're talking about themselves as if they're rabid animals, right? It's an insult to women. Hijab and this asking women not to wear short skirts, I'm absolutely appalled by that. I didn't see that before. I didn't know that had happened. That's absolutely disgusting. So we're going to erode women's progress in this country to appease barbaric mindsets? They are the ones that need to understand you are in the West now, and we have something called feminism here, and we have something called equality of the sexes here. And your mindset of thinking that if a woman isn't covered head to toe in black, therefore she's a whore, that mindset needs to change. Women don't need to change. That mindset needs to change. And I'd like to add that even in countries where women are covered head to toe, I'll take Egypt, the country of my family, for example, 99.3. That's an astounding number. It sounds like I made it up. It sounds like hyperbole. 99.3% of women report being sexually harassed in Egypt. And that's a country where women are covered in hijab. So what that shows you is that this has nothing to do with women. It has nothing to do with the way women are dressed. It has everything to do with these men and their barbaric, backward mindsets. And that's what needs to change. Even in Hajj, even at the house of Allah, the most holy place for Muslims, women are being harassed there all the time. And there is a hashtag about it called Mosque Me Too, where women were talking about that. It's really important for us. And, there's so many things I want to say, Mark, but the president, or the ex-president of Pakistan, when he talked about how the reason why there were so many rapes in Pakistan is because women weren't covering themselves. These are absolutely disgusting, atrocious things that you would expect to hear 1,400 years ago. You don't expect to hear that in this day and age. At this point, we should understand that men have control of themselves. Unless they're criminals.
No, that's true. There's no reason why we should impute to them no more self-control than a rabid dog, as you say. But just to take your country, Egypt, if you look at photographs of Cairo in the twilight of, King Farouk's reign, so say 70 years ago, the women there don't look so different from the kind of women you'd see in London or in Ottawa or any other capital city. But they changed. They went under the cover. They pulled on the body bag, stayed in the body bag, and that's the bet that these people have made. That as in France, there are neighbourhoods now where native French women put on headscarves and coverings to go out at night so they're not harassed by guys. And now that's going to be coming to a Yorkshire village.
That's absolutely correct. And in the 50s, the president Nasser was laughing at the Muslim Brotherhood when they attempted to ask him to get all women in Egypt to wear hijab. It was a joke. And that's what's actually happened this many years later. Women that were walking around freely, going to university, wearing miniskirts, are now covered head to toe in hijab out of fear. Because what didn't happen is there was not a change of the mindset. There was that Islamic revival, that whole idea of women need to cover up and women need to protect themselves from these horrible men instead of telling men not to be horrible. The mindset hasn't changed. And that's why these kinds of things can sort of, history can just repeat itself.
Yes, it does. In Alexandria and in Paris suburbs and now in a North Yorkshire village. Thank you very much, Yasmin. We always appreciate seeing you and we hope to see you next time. Ask me anything you'd like. Stump the Steyn is coming up. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Plus 2 words to cheer the soul. Leilani Dowding. We're coming right back.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
We started the show with this tweet from Leilani Dowding. They have algorithms that will ban you in 30 seconds for posting disinfo, but nothing when you say you are going to kill your grandma and shoot up an elementary school. That's true. Let's explore it in a bit more detail with Leilani herself. When you put it like that, it's clear that actually they could have algorithms that would have alerted Facebook or whoever at the time that guy made the announcement and brought police to the school a lot earlier and maybe prevented all this. But instead the algorithms are designed to get you rather than the mass murderer.
Well, this is it. Where are their priorities? This 18-year-old wrote, I'm going to shoot my grandma. I've shot my grandma. I'm going to shoot an elementary school. So how is it that nothing got flagged, nothing happened at all? I could write something about, a vaccine side effect or lockdown, or I don't agree with masks, and all of a sudden, I've got a disinformation banner up on my screen. I've got, or I get a 30-day ban on Facebook, but nothing for these people. I just don't understand how they can ban us so quickly and censor us so quickly, but nothing for these people. And actually, I will say I don't agree with censorship at all, because if you were to take down his tweet or his Facebook post, it would actually be even worse. And this is where I don't agree with censorship. If people say crazy things, let it be seen so that, people, they can be reported to the police, they can be noticed by Facebook, whoever the Facebook checkers are. Don't actually censor these people, and don't censor anyone at all, because a lot of people would think, oh, I've been censored, I've been taken off of social media. I would want everybody censored that says something worse than me. Well, actually, I don't. I don't think these people should be censored. They need to be flagged and they need to be looked at.
But it gets to what our technology is being used for. I mean, clearly they've devised algorithms. So if you mention ivermectin, for example, which is a product related to COVID that drives governments nuts, if you say ivermectin or you say it on a YouTube video, the video will disappear within 10 minutes. It'll be gone. It's happened to this show some nights. But at the same time, you would think it would be possible to devise an algorithm that would alert people if someone was using the words "shoot up my school," because there have been 27 school shootings so far in America this year. So it would seem to be more of a crisis than you talking about ivermectin or not wanting to get your next jab from Sajid Javid or whatever.
Well, this is it. It's where are their priorities? What are they making these algorithms for? And it seems to be anything against a government narrative, and it's not going on these insane things that shouldn't be happening. And most of these shooters of mass shooting that do carry out these mass shootings write manifestos beforehand. There are warning signs out there that we should be picking up on. The guy that shot up the shopping centre in Buffalo, he had talked on some social media about beheading a cat, beating it to death, and that he had no feelings of remorse for it. So, there's warning signs out there, but they're not prioritizing. They're prioritizing the most stupid things, like taking people down for talking about ivermectin or being against lockdowns or anything else. And it's like, I'm just so angry I can barely get my words out, because it's such a tragic, horrific, awful thing, and it keeps happening over and over. And there are warning signs out there.
No, well, what's infuriating is the fakeness of this whole disinformation thing. They need to censor the internet so that British subjects will be safe from you, Leilani Dowding, because you're a harmful figure. That's the world they're building. But they don't need to make the world safe from some guy who wants to shoot up his schoolhouse or a supermarket in Buffalo. Leilani, by the way, has a fantastic Twitter feed, and you should follow it every day, because there's all kinds of great insights in there. This one, you said, "I'm sick of this obsession with carbon." This is after we've heard these guys at Davos saying everyone's going to be given a carbon footprint, and it's going to be like your bank card when you stick it in the wall and you want to take out 100 quid, but they say, oh, no, your limit is £15. It's going to be like that with the carbon now. Everyone's going to have an individual carbon limit. And you say that, in fact, there's all kinds of other stuff they should actually be worried about.
Well, it baffles me, because first of all, they're talking about carbon when they've all flown in on private jets. The taxis have come in from 2 hours outside to transport everybody around. The CEO of Alibaba is talking about how we can all watch our carbon footprints and what we eat and what we drive and where we go and what we buy on there and purchase on their platform. But what about other things like plastics. No one's talking about plastic. No one cares about the millions and billions of masks that are going into our oceans. No one. What about the little bits of plastic from all the billions of tests that have gone on? What about all the toxins in our food and what we're eating? So this whole thing of carbon's the basic building blocks of life. Trees will absorb carbon. So, you know, why are we chopping down all the trees for HS2, the train, when we can't even get train drivers to drive our trains that are on the train tracks now? It's absolutely ludicrous. So you're chopping all the trees down for HS2. We haven't got train drivers anyway. But let's talk about carbon, because carbon's the only thing that matters.
Yeah, it's really weird. As you say, just the masks. I mean, all these people who are, initially I just wore one mask, but now I wear 3 masks. And as you say, they all just get tossed in the ocean. And the next Godzilla reboot they do, Godzilla's going to come up out of the Sea of Japan, and he's going to be covered in COVID masks from head to toe because of the pollution from that.
Don't get me wrong, I love the environment, I love nature, I love this planet, but they're so obsessed with carbon, and they're not going to say, you're going to get your points for having an electric car, but never mind all the lithium and all the pollution from the lithium and the cobalt mining and the kids that are digging it out of the mines in Africa. It's like... points for an electric car. Well, where does electricity come from? It's non-stop stupidity, and it's so one-sided and just so hypocritical of these people that are just doing the exact opposite of what they preach to us.
Yeah, and the reason why that Alibaba guy doesn't talk about it is because the Chinese paymasters behind that company are the big lithium guys on the planet when it comes to resources in Africa and apparently even in Afghanistan. So that's why he doesn't bring. That's why carbon is the only metric they use now. As I said, you've got a fantastic Twitter feed, Leilani, and they were just 2 of the many routine insights you have on that every day. Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Let us stump it out. What do we got here? Oh, John says, Mark, you're having an effect. The missus and I were out in the car today. We drove past a ginger lady and both said at the same time, ginger growler. How we laughed. Yeah, that's it. You cross your left leg in, you cross your left leg out. In, out, you shake it all about. You do the ginger growler, and I've got to get that on my next album. The Shelf Cider. The Shelf Cider says, please play the monkey to the chimp clip again every time. This is my monkey pox alert that we have on the show. I'm very scared about the monkey pox. It's stalking the land, ravaging the land. And so we have a monkey pox alert that goes because of the new monkey pox vaccine. Jabba, 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 said the monkey to the chimp. Go!
Dabba 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 dabba, said the chimpy to the monkey. Dabba 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 dabba, said the monkey to the chimp.
I had a lot of questions saying, who is that? That's a young Debbie Reynolds. For you young people, she is the mother of Carrie Fisher, who, when I say young people, I mean, of course, late middle-aged people. She was the mother of Carrie Fisher, who played Princess Leia in Star Wars. Julia asks, can I ask, would Boris Johnson be less appealing if he had a civilized haircut? Or is it a load of jabber, jabber, jabber? Boris Johnson's haircut is the coiffure equivalent of Bill Gates's moobs. It costs him a fortune to get his hair to look that bad, just as it costs Bill Gates a fortune to have his moobs like that. It's the low-hanging fruit. That is going to do it. I have some great news for you. To thump your Thursday for the next 2 hours, Patrick Christie's. What do you got, Patrick?
Hey, that was absolutely fantastic. What a fabulous introduction that was. You had Bill Gates' moves, you had a song about some chimps, and talk of your ginger growler. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to top that, Mark, but lovely stuff. The first time we've ever actually spoken in person, you and I, as far as I'm aware. But monkeypox hysteria, Mark, that's right. Our NHS is already, shock horror, already changing the info elements of its page about monkeypox to make it sound basically more deadly and more transmissible and more scary than it is. I'm going to get stuck into that. And Widdicombe will be on. You love to see. And are we still a Christian country? We have got very, very changing demographics here. She'll literally be putting the fear of God into us in a way there, Mark. After 10, of course, we've got everything that starts in the United States of America, eventually makes its way over here. Is that going to be critical race theory? I think it's only a matter of time. We've got a wonderful panel as well, and much, much more coming your way, as well as all of your front pages. Tune in.
That's fantastic. What a packed show. And it's all coming up just for you after the weather. Stay safe, stay free, keep away from the ginger growlers.
Hello, Alex Deakin here with your latest weather updates. The skies will clear a little overnight, which should allow a bit more sunshine for most of us tomorrow, but it will also allow temperatures to fall, so a little fresh first thing on Friday morning. Here's the bigger picture. High pressure to the south, low pressure to the north. In between, a fair few weather fronts drifting across the country. They've been bringing a lot of cloud today. This one is edging away to the south, bringing drizzly conditions and a lot of mist across the southwest, but otherwise pulling away, allowing break